You could all please join me in Gassho. When one realizes true and real Shinjin, one is immediately grasped and held within the heart of the Buddha of unhindered light, never to be abandoned. To grasp, sesshu, means to take in, setsu, and to receive and hold, shu. When we are grasped by Amida, immediately, without a moment or a day elapsing, we ascend to and become established in the sage of the truly settled. This is the meaning of attain birth. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Morning, everybody. Looking around. Faces old and new. Good to see everyone here today. So for those folks who are just joining us today for the first time, our resident minister, Reverend Tadao Koyama, is also overseeing our sister temple in Portland. So once a month, he goes down to Portland and gives the message and leads service down there. And I'm sure they're glad to have him. And so on those days, Lynn Ray and I will lead service. And so that's what we're doing today. So in the passage I read, it's pretty heavy on Jodo Shinshu, so our school of Buddhism, to realize true and real Shinjin, to be grasped and held in the heart of the Buddha. This is a fundamental teaching in this school of Buddhism, that the Buddha of unhindered light and life grasps all beings, that reality is reaching out to us in every moment to teach us, to guide us, to take us in, to care for us, even when it may not always feel like it. In this particular passage, this is a section from the writing by Shinran Shonin, our founder, who's up here to the Buddha's left. And the first line is from a text, and the second is him commenting on it. And so the part I read for you, to grasp, sesshu, means to take in, setsu, and to receive and hold, shu, is his commentary. And that's something I want to dwell on today a little bit. This theme of taking in, to receive, to gather, to care. Because it's something that we're desperately in need of in this world. Some of us might be desperately in need of it for ourselves. And so part of the teaching of Buddhism, right, is that our primary goal is to reduce the suffering of ourselves and of others equally, because we're all connected. There's a phrase in Jodo Shinshu that shows up in one of our chants, which is the phrase grasped and never abandoned, which is a sesshu fushu, fusha, sesshu fusha, which is the action of Amida as Amida, right? This personification of reality and compassion is guiding people and gathering people. Setsu is to gather, to guide. But I want to reflect on this as our own lives. So a few weeks ago, Reverend Blaine Higa was visiting us from our sister temple in Kona, and he actually used some of our chants, and he said, these chants are about Amida, but they're also guides for how we can behave, how we can aspire to behave. And maybe it was the first time I'd heard a minister do that in 10 years of being around Jodo Shinshu. Like, we chant this about Amida, right? Jusei is a statement of Amida's vows. Sambutsage is he'll eventually become Amida's praise of the Buddha that he studied under. But the idea that it's guidance for us, it struck me. So today I want to dwell on this notion of gathering and guiding. And I want to use a concept that maybe folks have heard about. It's not totally like central Jodo Shinshu though. It's called the Bodhisattva's 4 methods of guidance or gathering. Shi Shoho. Anybody heard of Shi Shoho? If you haven't, that's okay. Yeah, the 4 methods of guidance. It's not a big Jodo Shinshu thing. It shows up in early Buddhism, in the Pali Sutras, and it also shows up in the Lotus Sutra, which is an important text that Shinran studied, but it's not the central Buddhist scripture in our text. But it's guidance for bodhisattvas. So quick question, what's a bodhisattva? Okay, that's a very Jodo Shinshu answer, John. A fool, okay. Very Jodo Shinshu. Bonbu, someone who's, I heard some other stuff. Aspiring to become a Buddha. Awesome. Thank you, Donna. Musician and teacher. So someone who's aspiring to be a Buddha, yeah. In the really basic, the broadest definition is anybody on the Mahayana path. Anybody who is committed to the Mahayana path. So anyone who is here and committed to practicing this form of Buddhism or any kind of Mahayana Buddhism is a bodhisattva. So there's this notion of the 4 methods of guidance. So it's kind of like How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? If you remember that book. But it's a way to think about how we can relate to others and to guide them and to gather them, right? Like gather them. And we live in a polarized time in the world and in our country. And there are probably people that you can think of in your life whose opinions you disagree with very strongly. And we've lost in our country, if we ever had it, our instinct for civil discourse, right? Especially the internet, right? The internet, it plays to our basest impulses. It makes us want to drop in zingy one-liners and insults and not actually engage in conversation. And so as a society, we're less able to be with those we disagree with. And those disagreements can be very legitimate, right? Not to undermine it, but the Bodhisattva's 4 methods of guidance is how can we think about being a bodhisattva with others, right? In this temple, with people we disagree with family members, with coworkers. So I'm going to go through the 4 methods of guidance and ask you to kind of keep that in mind. Keep in mind the people, the real people in your life, right? This is not monastic Buddhism. What we say today here, like what Lin Ray and I talk about, ideally, we want it to be things that are helpful for all of us as we go out into the world. And as several of our ministers have said, and Reverend Kakihara, who's 2 ministers ago, said this, he gives the Dharma message that he also needs to hear. Right? So I'm up here giving a Dharma message I need to hear too. So I'm with you in this. So here are the 4. I'll go through all 4 and then I'll say all 4 and then I'll go through them. The first one is probably pretty familiar to people who've been around Mahayana Buddhism. The first of the Bodhisattva's methods of guidance and gathering is dana, charitable offering. Dana, charitable offering, or fusei in Japanese. Number 2, loving words. Aigo, loving words. 3, helpfulness or beneficial conduct. Rigyo, so helpfulness or the practices or behavior that benefits. And finally, working together, doji, working together. So the first, charitable offering. Now, if you're brand new to the temple, you might be thinking, okay, this is where there's the pitch for money, right? This is only a small part of what Buddhists and Mahayana Buddhists in particular think of charitable offering. Classically, the Buddha broke charitable offering down to 3 categories of increasing importance. The first is needful material goods. So this is what we think of offering, right? So offering to the temple, offering to a neighbor of needful things, food, clothing, shelter, financial support. The second is offering of the Dharma, offering the teaching, offering a perspective that can help someone suffer less, right? And we have to be careful about this because if you come in and tell people what to do or what to think, that does not work, right? So this takes a lot of skill to offer the Dharma at the right moment, when it's most helpful, because it's what the person needs and not because you need to sound smart. And the third is fearlessness. The third offering is fearlessness. I like to expand this, and other teachers do, to emotional comfort. Right? And in the world we live in today, how can we, right? How can any one of us provide fearlessness for someone? So the goal with these is the sake of the other, right? The sake of what the other person needs and not because of we think that's what they need. This particular one this is number one, dana, charitable offering. This kind of covers everything. So all of the other bodhisattva methods of guidance. I was down in Berkeley just yesterday for minister's assistant training. They run it at the Jodo Shinshu Center twice a year, and those of us who are minister assistants, ideally they want us to come down at least once a year to do training, chanting training and doctrinal training. And we had a great presentation by a mental health professional about pastoral care and things. And she reminded us that oh, sorry, that's the next one, good speech. I'll get to that in a second. So offering. This is one of the 6 perfections in Mahayana Buddhism, which Sensei talked about last year, but offerings of needful material things, offerings of the Dharma, and offerings of fearlessness. Right? In a time when we're so caught up in outrage, and you probably, if you get caught in this, you might start doom scrolling to get that hit, that emotional hit, that kind of hit of outrage. But you also may have people in your life who are legitimately outraged and come to you, and they come to you with that outrage. And part of that is they want your energy to get up with them in that outrage. And fearlessness is something you can bring in that moment. Not the fearlessness of saying, it's going to be fine, you're not worrying for no reason, but the fearlessness of saying, we can handle our lives right now. I can be with you. I'm not going to get caught in your outrage, but I will be with you completely. Can I give you fearlessness? So we do this through our actions, our behavior, and also our words. And so this is the second, kind words, loving words, aigo. Words that comfort and guide. Words that are caring. So the presentation I saw yesterday, which was from Reverend Carmela, who's a minister's assistant down in Salt Lake City, and also a therapist. She said in Buddhism, right speech has 5 qualities. I hope I can remember all of them now. I didn't write them down here because I printed this before I went down there. With the acronym THINK. So is the speech that you're giving someone timely? Is it the right time to give them that speech, right? Right? If you have a critique of my Dharma talk, this is not the best time to make it, right? Make it later, right? And the same, right? If you're in the middle of something and I'm like, hey, just FYI. Is it helpful? Is it actually helpful? Am I telling you something because it's going to help? Or is it just because it feeds my sense of I need to be right, so I need to tell you? I forget what I is. I can't remember what N is either. Oh, sorry. But K is also important, which is kindness. Are they kind words? Not nice words, right? And there's a difference between kindness and niceness. Kindness relates to helping, to providing emotional relief. Nice is just like, hey, how you doing? Oh, great. How you doing? Oh, super, right? That's fine. That has a place in our culture, but kindness is something deeper. So we can guide and grasp and support and gather people through offering and through kind words. The third one is helpfulness, beneficial conduct. So this is acting, so doing, walking the talk, doing for others. BWA does this really well at the Tacoma Buddhist Temple, right? Acting for BWA folks, thank you for all the selfless activity that you engage in on behalf of the temple. Many other people as well engage in this. So the key here is doing what others need, not what you think they need. That's the tricky part, right? I think, yeah. This is often something that comes up in like community organizing. When we have classes at PLU that are about community engagement, we have students going out and helping organizations, pitching in. A really strong message is get there, do what they're asking for you to do first, and then give it a while, and then give it more time, and then give it some more time before you start making suggestions, right? Because communities know what they need. Right? People will generally know what they need. So offering, loving words, beneficial action. And the last one is working together. Doji. And this is the same do as in dobo or dogyo, on dobo, on dogyo, like fellow practitioners, is togetherness. And G just means work or business. Like our board meetings are called VG Kai. We're just like taking care of business. We're the meeting that takes care of business. And we usually do, yeah. So the OG, working together. So if there's somebody you have a hard time with and you have a hard time talking with them, sometimes working alongside them is a way to be together, to work together without having to engage in those things that you know are going to make you mad, that you know you're just not going to agree on. There's a great proponent of interfaith cooperation here in America named Ibu Patel. He's Muslim American, grew up in Chicago, and he founded an organization called Interfaith America. And he really focused on college students, trying to help build leadership so college students could learn to be leaders in interfaith engagement, because that's not always positive. And his biggest point was, right, in interfaith, he's like, here's how interfaith is normally done. You get 5 people to sit together on a panel and talk about, well, this is how holidays we have in our tradition. In Buddhism, we have these holidays. Oh, in Judaism, we have these holidays. He said, those panels are great, but they don't go anywhere. Right? They can be educational, but they usually don't go further. So what you need to do is get all those people together and their communities and do stuff together, like community outreach, or if there's a need in your community, like you all work together at the food bank. It's like, that's how you get people with differing opinions to start understanding their common goal, their common identity, is by working together, by doji. It's a big part of our temple life here. If you're new and you heard about the volunteers, right? Jim was asking for volunteers. It's a big part of our life in this tradition, is working together on stuff that may not seem obviously Buddhist, but it's part of what it means to be a community. It's how we gather and embrace each other. Yeah, nice ideas, that's right. And also newcomers. Don't overcommit, especially if you're new, right? Don't overcommit, but over time, if you find that this is helpful. Yeah, I was going to turn into teacher mode and ask you all to talk with your neighbors, which is really rare. We don't do it a lot here. Yeah, I think I am actually going to do it. So John, you're welcome to sit there, but you may want to move. So find a neighbor and just think of some examples from your life. If you're a temple member, if you think of examples from this temple of places where this happens, but they are charitable offerings, loving words, helpfulness, and working together. So I'm going to ask you to turn to a neighbor or a couple neighbors. And if you're a temple member and you've been here a long time, look for somebody new if no one's talking with them. And just try to think 1 or 2 examples. If you can't remember the whole list of 4, that's okay. Hold on to one. Oh, here's an example of that. Charitable offerings, right, which is material goods, the Dharma, and fearlessness, right? Have you been able to offer fearlessness to someone in your life? If you have, that's amazing, right? Loving words, helpfulness, and working together. All right, talk to a neighbor. Introduce yourself. All right, I'm sorry to call you back, but put a pin in that because you can keep talking about it at the coffee hour. So I think we're getting a head start on coffee hour, which is fantastic. If you're new or if it's been a while, coffee hour is all the way down the stairs. There's a doorway right over here. You go all the way down, grab some food. There's no assigned seating. Just grab some food and coffee and sit down. So charitable offerings, loving words, helpfulness, working together. Did anybody hear anything in their discussion, or did anybody talk about anything you want to share? Sharing. Well, I heard lots of good stuff, so maybe you can tell me about it. So again, these are referred to as the Shi Shoho, the Bodhisattva's 4 methods for guidance or for gathering in people. And there's probably people in the world that you don't want to gather in, right? People who are not safe for you. But there's a lot of people in the middle. And these methods of guidance can come up even in moments with strangers. How can we contribute to decreasing, lowering the temperature, right, in our society, decreasing the suffering for ourselves and for others, rather than getting angry, right? So Amida can be a role model, right? And that's, again, that's unusual. In our tradition, we generally focus a lot on accepting our imperfections. And that's really valuable, especially in a society dominated by advertising. It's designed to make you feel imperfect. But we can also use it as, Amida, use them as a model. So I'm going to read again the note from Shinran Shonin to close my talk. It's about Amida, but also think about it as, right, how we go about our lives. So if you can please join me in Gassho. When one realizes true and real Shinjin, one is immediately grasped and held within the heart of the Buddha of unhindered light, never to be abandoned. To grasp, sesshu, means to take in, setsu, and to receive and hold, shu. When we are grasped by Amida, immediately, without a moment or a day elapsing, we ascend to and become established in the stage of the truly settled. This is the meaning of attainment. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida.